Photographer of the Year. Let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Courage in my veins, running uphill, a wildfire heart that never stays still. I was born with a spark my daddy couldn't kill.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where today I've got one of the newest members of Infamous, Dany Schonauer, former Dynasty, and also, I don't think you know, but our paths actually crossed for the first time when you were on level. But anyways, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. You say that, and I actually don't remember that, so that's interesting, but not surprising.
I will actually show you the exact moment where our paths crossed. So here, let me pull this up quick. I think this was 2023, maybe. This was at my home field in Outlaw here in Austin. And I think you were here scrimmaging Notorious and maybe the Russians or Red Legion.
You're right. Yeah, the Russians. I remember they had the hardest paint ever.
Yes.
It's just like marbles. So yes, I do remember that. That was when you guys had the event there, actually. I believe it was that same, because we came up the week before the event, and it was...
Yeah. The Texas event, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what... Was it like... It wasn't San Antonio. It was like...
No, it was the one in Round Rock. Because this field was, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes away from where the NXL event was.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so I had remembered that. I was like, man, you looked familiar when you first got into Dynasty. I'm like, where have I seen this guy from before? And I went back and I was like, oh, you were at the field at Outlaw. And it's just, I think that happens so often in paintball where you interact with so many people that are on different teams and whatnot because the community is so small.
Right.
And then your paths will go away and they come back eventually. And so I don't even think you and I had a conversation that whole entire weekend. So it's just crazy. Then this past year or two with Dynasty, we had obviously a lot of conversations.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's funny. I don't even know that I've ever even seen that photo. It's a pretty cool photo, but that's funny. I mean, you probably tagged me a long time ago. And
sure, I did.
I'm not the best with the social media. My wife's always getting on my case. Panda always used to get on my case too. I was like, dude, damn it, you can run it for me. How's that sound? But
and I think Panda was the one that when I had sent him the album, he was like, hey, make sure you're tagging all my guys for it. And I'm sure I did at some point because that was right when I started too.
That's so funny. But yeah, it is interesting. I feel like you're spot on with that. You so often you cross paths with somebody and then you both go your separate ways, so to say, and then 3-4 years later you kind of run in and you're like, hey, remember that? Or I haven't seen you in 3 years.
And it's kind of and we'll get into talking about Infamous because that's kind of where you're going now is into this new team of kind of unknowns. Before we dive into that, though, I do want to go backwards and I want to talk about this last year. I think going into 2025 with Dynasty with a new head coach, obviously they added a few players, obviously lost a few as well, but I think there were still really high expectations, and to not get the results that anyone wanted. Talk to me about this year through your eyes and what your experience was. Hey, before we go any deeper into this episode, I just want to give a huge shout out to a few show sponsors. First and foremost, Pro DNA. And as you can see right here, last week, it was insanely cold in Austin, Texas. We had a huge ice storm and we had temperatures that were in the single digits. Now, I wanted to go outside and test my Pro DNA waterproof socks when I was walking bunker. And well, lo and behold, not only did they keep my feet nice and dry, they also kept them pretty warm too. So these waterproof socks are for sure a must-have for your paintball bag for this upcoming season. And then, of course, that leads me to talk about BFP Gear, one of the best places to buy any paintball gear that you need for this season, especially these waterproof socks. I know locally here in Austin, Texas, most of the players are ordering their gear directly from BFP Gear, and they're getting it within a few days. So once you're done watching this podcast, head over to bfpgear.com and grab yourself some Pro DNA waterproof socks. Okay, back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like almost to take it a step further back, towards the end of the year before, right? I got on Dynasty and we won the first event, and then we also didn't have the best season either. We had 2 missed Sundays, and then there was obviously a mass exodus, which was interesting because it's like I just got on the team. These are all, still kind of felt not maybe super comfortable, opening up and being like my own person, right? Like I was with all my friends that were childhood friends that I've known for, over 10 years basically. And
Yeah.
then to like lose some of these guys you leave your team for and get to play with for a season, it was an interesting one. And then obviously brand new coach, get a couple new guys, like you're not really sure, right? The expectation, it's Dynasty, right? You expect Dynasty to win all the time. That's just, since I've been playing paintball, you just expect that. So, we went into the season probably confident, but also like a little unsure, like how is this season going to go? Because there is a brand new coach, and essentially we lost 3 starters from the team that was winning all these events, and now you got people that were close and playing a lot, but maybe weren't starters at every event, right? Stepping up. And I think getting into that first event and taking second, right? That was a situation where it was like, okay, yeah, we maybe are gonna do really well this season. We're gonna win a couple events and always be in the finals. And then it progressively we got further and further away, right? I think we literally did worse every single event. And then the last 2, I think we finished like 14th or 15th at both of them. So, I mean, obviously it was very frustrating. Obviously make changes after that, which led to I think a little bit of my leaving and, getting more people. And at the end of the day, right, the team has to be able to fund. I don't think people quite understand how expensive paintball is and, what it takes to run a professional organization and, the funding part of it, right? If you could get extra money to essentially, keep the team funded, I think that's obviously makes a lot of sense. And I know it's kind of going away from it, but yeah, I mean, overall, we definitely was a frustrating middle to end of season for sure, after a really promising start and something that looked like we were going to get right back to where we started 2020, 2024.
Yeah, because I think you guys came out swinging at Vegas the year before, and that was your first event with Dynasty, right?
Yeah, that was my first event, and came out, we won. I was like, wow, this is great. It's like that was the expectation, obviously, but yeah, I think it was still a little bit of a surprise, especially when we went down to the Hurricanes a couple of points and then managed to come back and win that one. That was an awesome event.
Yeah, it's like that true traditional Dynasty style where like, hey, we're never out of it, and then you come back, right? And I just had Mike Bianca on, and we had a long conversation about last year as well. And I think I saw it too. It's like in Tampa, it's everyone just kind of looked at each other and they were like, holy shit, like we actually did this. And it's almost like no one believed it.
Yeah.
And I think I had even taken a picture of like Mike on Sunday in the like going into the finals. He like was like this, looking at his wife in the stands of like, I can't believe this. Yes. I almost wonder if the reverse would have happened if maybe you guys got kicked in the teeth the first event. Maybe that would have set the tone for you can only go up. So I just would have wondered like how that year would have inspired if it was flipped.
I hadn't really given that much thought, to be honest, just because obviously can't change the past. But yeah, I mean, you're probably to an extent right. I think you start off good and maybe people take their foot off the gas a little bit, right? And then you slowly start getting worse, and by the time you're like, oh man, we're in like a bad place, it's too late, right? I mean, essentially you're trying to fight an uphill battle, and at that point if you come out the first event and you do really bad, and then the second one you do a little bit better, you're like still progressively working towards that end goal, right? So like by the end of the season, you're probably you're probably spot on at that, I would say.
Yeah. Have you noticed anything about like yourself as a player playing with Dynasty versus Level or any other teams?
So I would say the one thing, if I could almost go back to do it is, on level, that was a team where when we got into the league in 2020, Robbie Goldsmith, who used to play for CEP, he came on and was coaching us, and
Yeah.
we kind of we didn't really know what to expect, right? We're a bunch of middle-aged guys, so to say, and we're just like literally all hardworking, actual blue-collar people that are paying to play paintball. And it was a situation at that point where we just were like, all right, well, we're just gonna like run at people and try to like be as aggressive as we could, and we started that style of paintball, and it actually worked for us pretty, not at first, but over time it started to work, and we did really well. And I think that's part of why Dynasty asked me to come play for him, was that style of paintball that I was bringing, because they were seeing like, hey man, this guy's like a thorn in our side, and sometimes it's by himself, right? And you're putting multiple people shooting at this person, and they're still being a thorn in your side. And then when I got on Dynasty, there's that team is full of elite people, right? And you don't really get the opportunity to mess up very often, because if you do, you're probably not going to play.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. Like you wouldn't expect anything less than that, right? So I think at times I was probably a little bit timid or afraid to maybe make some of the same moves, and ultimately cost myself in the long run, probably.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably like the biggest thing, right? Is just if I went back and just tried to be this person I was before I got on the team, instead of taking it a step back and trying to be more conservative, so to say.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. Like I said, I had just wrapped up with Mike a few hours ago, and offline when we wrapped up, he was like, "Hey, make sure to tell Dany that like I saw him when he was on level, and I saw the player he was, and he was like this fire guy, and like he always had this energy." And he was like, "Where was that last year?" And so I think even he could see that like you were still kind of reserved a little bit, of like almost second guessing in a way, because. And I get it. It makes total sense when you have that much eliteness at every position, like every rep matters.
Yep.
And I think that may have been part of why like Mikey left a few years ago, because I think he had a bad string of practices or something, and he didn't play a lot in a certain event. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, fuck, if I'm not practicing well, like now I have to really show up more. So you're almost putting more pressure on yourself in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like to like that point when I was on level, right? Like one thing I used to explain to people is like, if I went out and played, 5 points, and 2 of them I had a bad death, let's just say, right? Or I didn't do anything and we lost the point. Okay, but if those other 3 points I went out and got 2-3 kills and we won those points, well, we won 3 of the 5 points, we won the match, right?
Yeah.
To level, that was okay. On Dynasty, like, okay, you went out 5 points, but you died stupid in a dumb gunfight that you didn't need to take, but you took so that you could potentially get to a better spot to shoot people.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was like, it's not worth the risk. And then because I wouldn't take some of those risks, then later on, it's just like the point ends up losing anyways, and you didn't do anything. So it's like, all right, well, you may as well have just taken the risk almost at that point. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from too with like Mikey, because I feel like I heard that too when I got on the team. Is that like he didn't have a couple of events, he had rougher practices, and if you don't have a good practice, you might not play a single point at the event. And
it's hard, right? Because like when you're behind guys like Archie and Arturo, like you have added pressure on yourself. Like now I have to go perform because I have to match these guys and match the level. There's obviously going to be future, Danny's that are joining teams like Dynasty and Fit and whatnot, where these teams are going to be so stacked in the future. Besides not putting that pressure on yourself, how would you give someone the advice to not do that, right? Because I think it's easy to say, oh, don't put pressure on yourself. But how do you not do that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, I would say whatever you did to get on that team, right? Whatever you did that made that team decide that they wanted you, that's what you should just focus on, right? So there's a reason why you got to where you were, right? There's a reason why Dynasty wanted me there. So, I think if you just focus on that and try not to focus on like the other things, and just be a student of the game listen to your teammates, listen to what they're asking if they want something specific out of you, and give it to them. Like, I know when I first got on the team, right, I was like, listen, if you tell me to run through a wall, I'm going to ask you how fast, or, I'm not going to say, oh, I don't know if I should run through the wall. I'm just going to, whatever you ask of me, I'm going to do. Just, So, and I think if you're willing to do that and you gain that trust of those people around you, that goes a long way, right? That was the hardest thing. I think the first year was just, you have these guys that were like, I think the 4 years before I was there, that's like the most winningest team probably at the time of any 5-year span. It was like, how do you earn trust? Even if you're playing better than somebody, how do you, it's like, yeah, but this person's won 20 events in the last 30. So like, yeah, I get maybe you're playing better, but like, how do I know that you're going to be the one that pulls out some clutch move in the finals when I have this guy who's pulled out 100 clutch moves? So it's like, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle at times, So I think you just have to be willing to, take a little bit of time, and you're probably not going to play a ton, and that's okay. Just learn and build the trust, and be you.
It sounds like it's a lot of self-talk that you have to do with yourself, and a lot of like self-reassurance of like, hey, this is part of the process. This is okay. Because if not, like, that's where the doubt starts to creep in. That's where the second guessing starts to creep in.
For sure. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, great advice. Let's shift gears and talk about your present now. Recently, it got announced that you're now joining Infamous, which from a lot of people I've talked to, like, oh, it's a perfect fit for Dany. So like, tell me about that, and how that came about and why Infamous.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the world works. I feel like, I think, like I said, going back to Dynasty, it's like, I obviously amazing experience.
Sure.
Those guys are all, became family to me to an extent. You know what I mean? Like, became great friends with all of those guys. I still just talked to Ryan like literally 2 days ago. So, when that, I think, looking at it, even for me, there was times where I was like, the guy can't be myself almost on this team. And, Sam being on Infamous, me and him are really close from just our years playing on level. He lives 2 hours from me. I literally just played a 10-minute with him a month ago. So, that I think is a huge factor. But I mean, Travis and his guys, like, they literally play the same style of paintball that like is what I'm good at, right? Like, they just want to come and punch you in the face and just get in your grill and just apply pressure. And it's not just one guy, it's literally across the board. The whole team, like every single guy is doing that. So it's like, when you have that kind of buy-in, right? It's like, it made the decision pretty easy. Like, I was talking to Skinny, I think the day that I found out I was, being cut and being released, and he's like, well, where do you think you'll go? And I was like, well, I think it's between like Infamous and maybe one or two other teams. Like, and I hadn't even talked to Travis or anything. Like, Travis didn't even know that, this happened. I don't think anyone really knew. Maybe a few people, but it just, to me, like, he had reached out the year before that, right? Like, my first year on Dynasty, when everybody was leaving, I think, Sharks, there's like blood in the water. Sharks came out, a bunch of people are, I think Arturo, I think like probably most of the guys on the team got offers to go places, but I wasn't going to leave after 1 year. But I know Travis had tried to reach out at that point, and it just kind of made sense in that regard. But no, I couldn't be more excited to play with these guys. I told Travis, I was like, I mean, yeah, obviously I got to talk to the wife, but like, I'm already in. So
yeah, it's like the pre-yes to it, but like get the actual confirmation.
Yeah, pretty much, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think almost in the same week when yours got announced, then it got announced that I'm bringing my brand over to Pro DNA, and same thing, like already working with Travis and just having such incredible conversations with him and ZP and Callie and the rest of the guys. Like, it's like, man, it reminded me of like a lot of blue collar, like people just want to work, and like they love what they're doing. They're on the clock, around the clock. And so it seems like a really good fit for you, because that seems like that's also your mentality too. You're just a blue collar hard worker.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it's just overall, like you said, I feel like I'd see that too, right? You see him at every event, you see him all working in the booth or hanging around the booth. Like, I mean, Dynasty was the same way in that regard, right? Like you would walk by the Dynasty booth and you might see Yosh, you might see Ryan, you might see any of the guys, hanging out back there. So it's pretty similar to that. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Hall's got, Arc and all that stuff in the booth. And yeah, I mean, it's just, the guys seem to be just a general family almost, hardworking family. It's just hanging out and obviously wants to win, but is there to do, everything. So
yeah, it seems like it'll be a really good fit for you. And it seems like you can kind of get back to that level style of playing that you were, where you can be loose a little bit more and be aggressive, because it seems like that's really what you're going to bring to the team, if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's the plan. I think when I was talking to Trav, I was like, it's nice. It's like a bunch of bruisers on your team. Like when we were playing Infamous, it was going to be a battle. So there's going to be just people in your face all the time. And I think that it's an exciting style of paintball too, that not a lot of teams like doing, so to say. Some teams be perfectly content to just sit there and shoot 10 pods into a zone, and it's like, man, that's so boring to me. Like I want to literally bunker everybody if I can. And now that we're doing the 5-pod thing, I think that'll help us as well. I know that's kind of news that's been getting kicked around here. So
I hope it speeds up. I hope it speeds the game up and it creates more moves and more risk. I think we need that. I hope it doesn't do the opposite effect, or it makes people more.
I do get that. I think where that won't be the case is, like, I mean, you have the attackers in the league are so good that as soon as like the zones drop, they're usually taking advantage of that. So it's like, as long as there's not a bunker where a guy can be close enough that he can see the move the whole time and just doesn't have to be shooting it to make, to stop you.
Sure.
I think if it's a layout like that, you'll definitely see it slow down, right? But if it's like the layouts where you have to have paint in the air to stop a move or stop somebody from getting to a place that's going to, potentially get a kill or two.
Yeah.
I think in that regard, it'll make it hard because people are just going to take that risk and be okay.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
For sure.
You've obviously played against Infamous a lot over the past few years. In your opinion, and they've been right there, right? Like they've been so close, I feel like, and they've been so close to like going deeper into Sundays and like even getting on the podium, but it just seems like they're missing something. What do you think it is that they're missing to like get them over that hump?
Yeah, I mean,
you can say it's Dany Schonauer too.
No, I'm excited just to, work with, I mean, we have Zach and Jonah are really, I mean, they're good and probably, if anything, underrated snake players in general, right? I mean, that's the thing, is like, I'm excited to come to the team because it's like, well, how can I even help those guys, right? Like, if I don't play every point, I'm not going to be upset about it, right? I want to play every point, but at the end of the day, if I can help the team grow and the guys on the team get better, like that's the end goal, right? I would just want to win. So if I can help them win, that's essentially the end goal. But no, I think it's just the consistency, right? I mean, this is such a hard game in that regard that it's like, look at Dynasty. You took second and then you're the 14th place team the last 2 events, man. How does that happen, right? You look at Fit. In their first year pro, they were not doing too good throughout the season, and then they come out and win World Cup, right? Like they were doing okay. They were like right there. They were like middle of the pack, and I think they made like 1 or 2 Sundays towards the middle or end of the season, and then they win World Cup. It's like, so they figured it out, obviously, right? So I think that's the thing, is I don't know that there's any one thing that I would say is like the one glaring thing, but I think in general, it's just consistency. And, I think they've figured out what their style of play is. So it's making that style work, right? And, not every layout is going to be, some layouts call for like a super aggressive team. I mean, look at the Russians, right? I mean, the Russians they want to play 15 points a match, but they've obviously been very, very good over the last 2 seasons. But there's events where it's like, that's just not realistic, you could try to do that, but you're probably digging yourself in a hole, or you're taking too many risks and throwing bodies away that you don't necessarily need to. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think for the past few years, a lot of teams have had a certain style, right? Like Damage has been known for like defense, like you've got to dig them out of their bunkers. And I think
right.
Fit has been that kind of like same mentality in a way. But I wonder with the shift in paint and whatnot, if it's going to be the teams that are winning consistently are the ones that are adapting the most of super aggressive and then also, pulling back a little bit too. I don't think just one style is going to win
I agree.
everything anymore.
Yeah, and I think when you start realizing like what you can take and what's like there's benefits obviously to run really far on the field, but like at some point you're like, okay, well you're just losing a body, right? So if you are able to determine like, hey, like these ones are risks, but the reward is so much higher than the level of risk. So if we do this a few times, like it's at the end of the day, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Xavi could run anywhere on the field, just like Sam Soberg can run anywhere on the field. But to them, his body's worth more than him getting to maybe like a D3 off the break. So like you don't see them maybe send it, but there could be a layout where they determine like, hey, this is a free move and we're going to take it, right? And I think if you can figure those things out, and I would say that's like one thing that is like always been my strength is, on level, I wanted to make my life as easy as possible. I wanted to get as far down the field as quick as I could, but also just make it so that it was not like a 50-50 run, right? Like I'm going to try to find something that I'm going to make it 7 or 8 times out of 10, right? Because to me, it's like if you 50-50, like it's not really worth it, right? Maybe take one step back or go to the bunker before that. But, I think sometimes you see teams that are stuck in that, well, we're just going to play this one style of slow paintball. They're not even going to risk it, even though like it might be an 80 or 90% survivability.
Yeah.
They still won't take that because it's not worth it to them. So
yeah, it's so like I think statistics have always been a part of paintball, but I think recently teams are really leaning into like the statistics of the survivability or the makeability, and you've seen it translate over the past years in the NFL, where historically on fourth down, no matter what, you're punting the ball, right? But it seems like more recently, it's hey, statistics show that if we're a yard or a yard and a half, like we actually have a more chance to continue the drive if we don't.
like a 70% chance of converting. Well,
yeah,
I mean, you see the Eagles doing 4th and 2 from their own 40-yard line, like all the time. It's like, if they don't get it, they could kick a field goal really at that point.
Almost right there too.
Right.
Yeah.
That Jaguars kicker can kick it like 67 yards, apparently. It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's just, it'll be cool to see like just how the game continues to evolve in that way as like more teams build out their coaching staffs and get more data around what moves are working and not.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think too, like, paintball, and it doesn't matter what level you play, right? Like I coached a D4 team here, which was a bunch of my buddies. They actually won World Cup at D4 Expo this year. But like, everyone shoots the same gun essentially, right? So like off the break, like you could have Marcelo out there, or you could have some D4 kid, and like obviously Marcelo's Marcelo, right? He's one of the best off the break, if not, the best, right? So it's like, but at some point, like a D4 guy could still shoot that same shot and hit that guy, right? And so, there are times though, to that point, that I've seen pro guys just they're shooting a lane for something, but they're not shooting the right lane. And it's like, well, you could shoot it, but that doesn't mean you're going to hit it, right? So like, just because they're shooting a zone doesn't mean you can't run through it. So I think in that point, like some people are like, oh no, their back center is always shooting snake side, so I'm not going to run that way. And it's like, yeah, but he's shooting 10 feet over that guy's head. So like you could run there standing up or walking there. It wouldn't matter,
and not even dive into the bunker.
Correct. And I see that, even at the pro division, right? So I think if people are willing to take those risks, that's where you start seeing the field open up.
I mean, that's like we could take paintball out of this and you're talking just life advice, right? Where like you take a risk of taking a new job or leaving your job and starting your own business. Like those are all the risk reward type of decisions that you have to make. And that's where paintball is just filled with those things. And that's where some teams make more success than others.
100%.
We talked a little bit before the show started in the green room. And I think every year, there's always people that come and go. There's a lot of movement. Some people talk retirement. Some people talk, hey, I'm playing for the next 5, 10 years, whatever it is. Let's fast forward 20, 30 years from now.
Sure.
Hopefully you've hung it up by then.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you hope to look back on at your career and be proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I think about, I kind of touched on this with the, talked to a really close friend, and he's like, you kind of accomplished everything at this point. And like, to an extent he's right, and to an extent he's not entirely right, because there's things obviously we all want to accomplish, right? We always want to be the best that we can. But yeah, I mean, 20 years ago when I first started playing paintball, I just wanted to be able to say I played pro paintball, right? Well, that goal came and went, and then it was, okay, well, I want to win, and I want to be the best I can be, and be considered elite. And I don't know that I've necessarily would say that I've become an elite player, so to say. Like, I think some people would probably say, yeah, you have. Some people would say, no, not quite. But I mean, I got to play for Dynasty, which is the greatest team of all time. And that's not something, like I said, became friends with all of those guys that will be friends with me, that I'll be friends with, right? Or consider friends for the rest of my life. So I think, at the end of the day, what I would like to look back on is just people being like, oh, that guy was a super nice kid or a super nice person off the field, but he was an absolute asshole on the field. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of who I became as a paintball player. And it's kind of like become I would say my motto is just being a nail or a thorn in your side, so to say. So I think if people say that, I'd consider myself happy.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great answer. And I think it's clearly shown that's been your personality on the field, right? And I've seen that. I think a lot of people have. I think off the field, that's where some people, I think in the know, like in the intimate teams will know you in your personal life. But for those of you, or for those people that don't, I've had the chance to kind of know you more on a personal level over the past 2 years, and especially with your mom, getting a chat with her at a few different events.
Yep.
She's just such a nice person. And I've come to learn, like, you've got a really cool story. And so I'll set the tone, and I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure.
But like, I think it was maybe this first event or second event this year, your mom and I were chatting for a good 30 or 45 minutes. And she was telling me about how when you were younger, like she would actually get on the field with you and film your games. And for a mom to do that is awesome. But then I think where it kind of unlocked, like, oh, I understand Dany on a different level. I think she said at some point you said, hey, mom, like, stop filming me, film the other guys, because I want to see what they're doing so I can learn from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
like break all that down.
If anyone, if you've met my mom, she's kind of a helicopter mom for sure. She's awesome. But when I first started playing paintball, I was like 16, 17 years old. So I didn't really I didn't get my license till I was 18, so she was coming around, and she always wanted to be around. I played hockey growing up, and she'd record all my hockey games. I was a goalie, so she'd be at every game. I was like, I remember as a kid being like, hey, why don't you just watch the game? Like, she's like, no, I want the footage. And it was helpful, right? Like in hockey, and I would go back and I'd rewatch it. And that was how I learned, like, okay, well, what mistakes are you making? Why did you give up 5 goals this game? And last game you gave up 1 goal, right? And so I think that then got to paintball, and I started playing paintball initially just for fun with my friends in the woods. And then we went and played a tournament, and I think we took like 3rd or 4th. And it was like, oh, from then on, I stayed out of the woods and just wanted to play speedball and, play tournaments and stuff like that. And so she would come, and to be honest, I don't remember her really getting too much on the field, but she'd be right next to the field. She may have gotten on the field and I just forget, but
she said she did.
That's funny. So she would record all she'd record it, but she a lot of times would just be recording me, and you could see some stuff, but it's like, well, what are you doing, right? Like, you're behind the camera, right? You're sitting there taking photos, and you're like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah.
And sure, I have like I don't want to say photographic memory, but I can remember a lot of the points I've played in my career, and I just kind of put them in my brain and try to learn from that. And when I first started playing paintball, there really wasn't a ton of video, right? It wasn't like I could go on Go Sports and watch all the pros and see what, Angel was doing or all these other guys were doing. So to that extent, she would record me, and then I'd go back and I'd rewatch it. But then I realized, like you're saying, it's like you can only see so much, right? I can only see what I'm doing, but I don't really know why I'm maybe making the decisions I'm making. So to an extent, it was like, all right, we'll zoom out. I want to see what the other guys are doing on the other team so I can figure out, because we weren't winning, right? So like, why were they beating us? What were they doing that was better? And then just try to learn from that. And then, once I got to like, playing more divisional stuff, she would still kind of be there. But eventually I was like, it's just, I'd rather you be a part of watching and enjoying it instead of like putting a camera behind you. But yeah, I mean, it's a big part of why I would say I succeeded, because paintball in Ohio, when I first started, was, I think like the highest team was out of TPA and was like D2. Wow. So there wasn't, it wasn't like there was a pro team. I think the closest pro team was probably Shock, and they were 7-hour drive for me, and you weren't going to do that.
No
back
way.
then. I didn't have a license. I wasn't going to be like, Mom, can you drive me to Illinois to go watch a practice or try to get spins against these guys that are way better than I am at the time. So
yeah, that's just next level thinking though. I think a lot of players nowadays, like, they want footage of themselves playing, and they want, the highlight reels of them. And I don't know if a lot of players would actually say, hey, you know what, film the other team, because I know what I did. I know what moves I made, but I want to see how they reacted to that. That's huge.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is, like, to add to that is, one thing I always did was I would try to think about all the mistakes I made, right? Like, why did we lose, or why did we win, but we like barely won against a team we should have beat by, a mercy rule. You start thinking back on like the moves that you didn't make. Like, a perfect example is, we played damage this year at World Cup, and I think I only played 1 point in that match. And there was a situation where we were up bodies and I was in the snake, and I knew the move in my mind was to take the highway run and bunker Keith. And the move was open, but I looked inside, and the sun was so bright that I couldn't really see anything, but I knew where their back guys were. But they were both shooting at me, but the brick blocked me out, right? But in my mind, I was like, I second guessed it, and I didn't make the move, and I tried to shoot him down the wire, and Keith shot me, and yeah,
I think this is the match, actually.
Probably is. And so, in that regard, like, I walked off the field, and I was like, I don't know what the outcome is going to be at this point of that point, right? But I know I could have won that point if I would have ran the highway. He was looking down the tape and bunkered him. And you don't really get too many of those opportunities to make those mistakes in pro, especially against the elite teams, right? Because as soon as you make that one mistake, and the difference is, I think we lost by like 2 that match.
Yeah.
And maybe we threw a point away trying to come back, but that would have been a swing point, right? That ties the match, that one move, right? Yeah. And so to that point, when I was younger, growing up and watching myself, I knew these moves, but I wanted to figure out, like, could I have made this move, right? Like, I didn't feel any guns shooting at me, but I didn't make the move because I maybe was scared, or I wasn't sure if I could do it safely. And you start watching and you start realizing, like, oh, I can make a lot more of these moves than I think I can. And then you start doing it and you start being successful at it. And then people are like, man, this guy just runs on the field, shoots everybody. It's like, well, more of you could do that too if you just, decided you wanted to do that. You wanted to be more aggressive, or you just wanted to take advantage of those. But if you don't know, it's like super easy, right? Like, you've watched enough paintball, you can go and you watch it, and it's like it's a chessboard, right? From the sidelines, you like can see everything, but when you're on the field, you only have like so much information.
Yeah.
Unless you're Ryan Greenspan, and then you see the chessboard from the back center, and you're just like, you don't make mistakes. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I was doing that back then to try to get better, and so that was my way of figuring those things out, and then I just progressively, was able to get better and better. And then obviously playing on the pro field, you kind of get the Go Sports, so you could go back and rewatch, and you're like, yeah,
dissect all of it. Yeah,
100%. And I think if you ask any pro guy that's at the top, they would tell you that's what they're doing, right? So
yeah, I think we've got a lot of divisional players who follow this podcast, and obviously bringing the pros on, like they want to hear how their mind works and their process. What would you say to those divisional players that are listening and watching? Of maybe they want to get to that level where you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because I feel like that's like everyone's got a different answer for it. I would tell people that it took me 15 years to become a pro paintball player. So there's some patience in there, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be coachable. You have to be willing to listen to people. And, I know it's a hard sport, right? Because this isn't like football or baseball or, basketball where you go into high school and you got a high school coach that teaches you, and then you go into college and you got another coach that teaches you. Like, most people aren't lucky enough to have a coach to tell them, right? Like, I didn't have a coach until I got to like semi-pro, and even that was like a guy that I was playing with. You know what I mean? So if you do have people by you that you can learn from, right? Whether it be other pros or just people that maybe have a little bit of more skill level than you, or maybe they don't, right? But somebody that's there and they have a pretty high paintball IQ. It doesn't matter that they maybe aren't. I mean, you could literally be better at paintball than them, but they have a high paintball IQ. And it's just listening to those people and trying to digest it and learn from that. And then, like I said, being patient. I think those are, invaluable traits. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? Like, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna mess up. You're gonna fall on your face, and just you gotta learn from them. Really, just learn from the mistakes. I think level as a team, when I was on level, we were going from Division 2 to semi-pro to pro. I mean, we would go into practice and we wouldn't win a single point at times, but then we get to the event and you do really well. And it's like, yeah, because you made every mistake you possibly could.
Yeah.
And then by the time you got to the event, you had already made every mistake. So you knew not what ones not to make, right? I mean, we used to practice damage when we got into pro, and you could ask Joey, he'll tell you, he'll be the first one to say, yeah, I made level good, because they would just beat the brakes off of us over and over and over. But we learned so much from that, right? And you have to be willing to do that. You can't, a lot of people, I feel like, just want to go and have fun. They say they want to get better, but they just want to win points at practice. And it's like, you're not going to get any better just winning every point. So
yeah, that's such a great answer, because that's, I think, you said it's a hard question to answer, right? But I've asked a lot of pros that similar question, and people taking a different route. But I think the theme everyone comes back to is it's a lot of ego work, where you're going to practice, you're not going to an event. And so when you're going to practice, that means you practice something. And I think so many people are so worried about, I've got to win this point, I've got to look good for the teammates on the side, I don't want to mess up, that you're almost creating that spot where you can't learn and you can't grow. And that's the exact opposite. Like, that should be the environment to go mess up and to learn about that.
Yeah, and to further that point, right, I think you see it a lot too in teams where you got guys that are fighting for spots, right? And guys start cheating or, pushing the envelope, and you're just like, it's okay to not be successful there. You just got to work through it, right? Like, it's okay to not be the best guy at the practice. And, there might be events where you don't play, but you just got to learn from it, right? And just keep working through it. But, if you cheat at practice and you just do whatever you can to win, and then you get to the event and you don't do anything, it's like, okay, well, what was going on
there?
Yeah. What's going on? So, yeah.
And I think you're spot on too, because obviously in the perfect scenario, like, you'll have a coach, you'll have fields that have coaches around you. But I think a lot of teams and players that are listening to this may not either be on a team that has a coach. Maybe it's a lower D5 or D4 team, and one of their own players as a coach.
Yep.
And so you actually made a good point of find people, if you can, at your local field that have a high paintball IQ. And um, this totally is not coming from like trying to pump myself up, but I watch a lot of paintball and I watch a lot of
Yeah.
paintball, obviously on the high level, right? So like I'm watching pros for 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 times a year. And just this past weekend, we have a new D4 and D5 team here in Austin called Black Lotus. Great guys. And there's a guy I've seen over the past season or two, and he rolls out of his bunker, and I've taken so many pictures of this guy that I learned his style, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his gun's way out here, and I finally pulled him aside. I'm like, hey, how are you looking down your marker? And I had him hold it up. I'm like, you're actually looking down the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, well, yeah, like it's easy to see. And so like we had a great conversation of like, well, here's why, hold it this way. And you just saw it unlock in his brain.
Yeah.
And so for him to like, in that moment, one, be vulnerable and receive that feedback, and then to change it immediately, the rest of the day, like his survivability skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Like he was there at the end of the points almost the whole entire match. And so who knows, maybe he goes on to have an incredible season and goes further. But like that, sometimes that one conversation with somebody who's got a high paintball IQ could change your career.
Yeah. And I think to that point, like, it's awesome that you were even willing to go up and say anything, right? Because it's so easy. I see it a lot. I feel like, it's so easy to just not say anything.
Sure.
Right. It's like people are caught in their own ways, or, you're afraid to go up to somebody because you don't know how they're going to react. Right. And so like when I'm at my local field, I tell people like, dude, don't be afraid. Like I'll walk up and be like, if you got questions, just come and ask. I'm not gonna bite you or anything. I'm not a vampire, right? Like so, and I think that's the majority of guys in the league
Totally.
that play professional paintball. Like, I mean, we're 99% of the pros are working a regular job. They're just normal people, just like you and me and everybody else. So it's like you can't be afraid to ask people, but also like to that point, I also would say, guys like me and other pro guys, like, don't be afraid. Like if you're at the field and you see guys making mistakes, help people out. It's really not that hard, right? Just walk up and introduce yourself. Like the amount of times I'd be at my local field and the guy like, oh wait, you play professional paintball for Dynasty? Like they didn't even know. And it's like, that's cool to me, right? Like I don't walk around the field and hope that people know who I am. I'm just there to be normal like everybody else and get a practice in. So it's like, you could see their eyes get all excited, and it's like, yeah. So if you have questions, like, please, and I end up my wife probably wants to kill me because usually I'm end up being at the field till 4:00, and it's 20 minutes from my house. So she's like, where are you? I'm like, just, hanging out and trying to be a paintball patron at the end of the day. So
other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the balance and I'll break this down. But like
sure.
You brought it up. A lot of pros have jobs. Some people have, multiple jobs. And I think it had to have been at some point last year. I got in to the event, one of the NXL events on Thursday, the practice day. And I walk up and like, you're fully geared, right? You've got pants, pack on, mask is on your head. And I see you've got your phone with headphones. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like Danny's listening to music, getting into the zone for practice. Cool, whatever it is. And then you're like, hey, I'm on a work call. And I'm like, oh shit. Like you're actually, playing professional paintball for one of the best teams in the world. And in between points, you're like on a work call.
Yeah.
So like, tell me about how do you juggle that? Because that's going to resonate with so many people, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is, so I'm I guess you could say project engineer, project manager for a solar company. We do commercial solar. So we build these big solar farms and stuff. So
Nice.
With my job, it's kind of never off, right? There's something going on all the time, or there's somebody calling me to figure out what's going on. And, unfortunately, a lot of times it's like guys are in the field building the site and they're like, hey, I'm running into this problem. And it's not one of those things where I can be like, all right, I'll call you tomorrow. It's like, yeah, hold on, let me call this person and then call that person. And, playing on Dynasty was tough because they're obviously the couple of the guys in California. So we would fly out actually 2 weeks before every event. So I'd fly out like Friday morning. So I'd miss a Friday. And then we'd practice Saturday, Sunday, and then I'd have a red eye home, get home at like 10:30 in the morning on Monday, and then be right at work right then and there, right? So, and then you get to the layout practice the following week, and I would fly in like Wednesday night or Wednesday during the day. So again, working through the day, flying, getting in somewhere, working till like midnight to try to catch up on what I missed throughout the day in the airport. And then, you're practicing Thursday and Friday, and then flying to the event on, a couple days later after practice and doing it again. And it's like when I actually took this new job after I was already on Dynasty, and I remember that guy was like, yeah, we get like 11 PTO days a year. And I was like, yeah, man, like that's not going to work. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, and one of my good friends, Tyler Dowiak, he played on level with me and coach level. It's his good friend, was my boss. So he had, that's kind of how I got the job initially. But it was one of those things where I was like, if that's the case, like I can't take this job. I'm like, I need like 25 days of PTO a year. And he's like,
just for paintball.
Yeah, like just for paintball. That doesn't include like if I want to go on a vacation, which probably not going to do, which the wife wants to kill me about on most cases. Another paintball tournament, but it's just one of those things where because it's there's so much time that you have to take away from work. I found myself in a situation where I was like, all right, listen, I'll work when I can, but just understand, like I'm going to be gone and traveling, and there's going to be times where I'm gone for the full day, right? And I might only be able to work for an hour here, or I have to get back at home and send out a couple emails at the end of the night. So yeah, Thursdays was always tough because it was like I'd already missed a couple of days from the weekend before, and I'm still trying to catch up, and you're on owner calls, and I mean, you gotta pay the bill somehow, right? So gotta keep the lights on. And I think that's if you look at most teams, like you got guy, there's probably a guy on every team that's probably doing something similar,
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think at all levels, right? Obviously at the top of the levels, all the way down to the bottom, you've got people that are working sometimes around the clock, and even, like Pro DNA and Dynasties or Infamous is a great example where you're going to the match, and then as soon as the match is done, yes, you've got to back to the next, but you've got to go right back to the booth and make sure things are going. And so the reason I wanted to ask is, one, it's relatable for a lot of divisional players who want to go through the ranks and understand that, like, hey, you know what? Like, they both can't exist. I can work a full-time job and play, even though there's going to be a lot of sacrifice. But I specifically want to ask, how do you turn it off, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're suited up, you're on a call, and then within 2 minutes, you're out in the fields. Like, how do you switch that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It might be a rare breed, so to say. Honestly, sometimes it almost makes it better because I'm probably a little pissed off that I was even on a work call 10 minutes before the match. And sometimes that anger actually like fueled me to be almost better, right? Because it was like, all right, I'm going to take out all the anger I've built up on this other person, on this other team. And I think I was listening to Mouse. He's like, I'm not trying to physically hurt anybody, when he was on your show.
Yeah.
And I'm not either, right? But at the end of the day, like you are trying to hurt the other person to an extent, right? Or you want to shoot them and make them think like think about it a second time before they maybe make that move that they would have normally made. And that might be the difference of winning or losing a point, right? So in that regard, it's not too hard for me to be like taking a call, because it's like, all right, now it's time to get focused on what I'm doing. And then maybe there's a little bit added like fuel to the fire, so to say, to, take it out on the other person. And then once the match is over, you guys are all friends. A funny story to that, not to get off topic, but please. I'll never forget I want to say it was like 21 or 22. We were playing Dynasty, and I overshot Blake for, in my opinion, cheating me pretty bad. It was like he cheated my teammate, and I just overshot him. I got to find the video, but there's literally like a slow-mo clip that somebody put of me like shooting him in the side of the throat, and it's like neck ripples type of a deal, and he turned and looked at me and walked at me and was like, I'm going to kill you. And then we ended up losing to Dynasty, and he pretty much murdered my entire, murdered all the guys on level except me. And I apologized to all of them afterwards, but Me and Blake became pretty good friends after that. I apologized to him afterwards, but it was in the moment, right? You're frustrated, you're playing, you have that fire, but as soon as the game's kind of ends, you're friends again. For the most part, right? There's still some pretty bitter rivalries, but
Oh,
for the most part, people are pretty nice as soon as the match is over and you kind of can walk away.
yeah, I think you're right. For the most part, it is. And when Thomas was on, he actually talked about the opposite of that. He was like, "There's guys that will hold grudges for years, and not talk to each other, and they take all the stuff happening on the field, they take it off the field, and like then it almost eats at your mind, right? Like if you're thinking about it all the time, and you're walking through the event, and you see that person, and it brings up that feeling, and so to be able to like release that on the field and walk away is really powerful."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like the opposite of that, I would say. Like I might hold a grudge on somebody if I feel like they treated me real bad on something, but I'm not, or if somebody shoots me 1,000 times. I mean, not literally, but like if I was Colt after Clint, shot him in the head that one event, I'd probably be thinking about that for a bit, waiting for my revenge. Because
Sure.
that's the thing, right? Is like when you play divisional, you aren't necessarily playing the same guys all the time, right? But the pro league is so tiny and there's only 20 teams, which you're gonna see somebody again at some point, right?
Sometimes throughout their weekend, multiple times.
Right. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, you really want to piss that person off? Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah, it's almost one of those things where like if you're gonna do it, just make sure you can back it up.
100%.
Make sure you can walk away with your tail between your legs.
100%.
Almost as important. Awesome. Well, Dany, this has been so good, and I'm so glad we finally were able to lock down a time. And it's one of those things where we were talking beforehand, where you're like, "Man, I wish we could have made this happen sooner." And life happens and whatnot. And I think I'm actually glad because I tried to get you on, I don't know, halfway throughout the season, and obviously, like you were busy.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually glad it worked out to where we weren't able to get you on until now because your story like unfolded even more, right? And now you're about to step into a whole new chapter of what it's going to be with Infamous. So it's pretty cool to see how everything's transpired and where you're going for whatever's next for you with this team.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing. It's totally different, right? It's like there was a storyline a year ago even, but
Sure.
now this is a totally new one that, that's how it's the funny thing about life, right? Is it's kind of, there's a lot of forks in your lives, in everybody's life, right? So
yeah, totally.
It's kind of interesting when you start going down the spider web, so to say. And no, I'm excited. I'm glad I was able to do it and finally make some time. And I apologize it took so long, but
it's okay.
Maybe we'll do this again.
Because I think this will probably come out, I would guess, right around the weekend of your first team practice. Like it'll actually be good for your teammates to like hopefully listen to this and learn a little bit of snippets and a little bit about you.
For sure. Yeah. I think we're gonna sometime in February, probably like middle of February. Right around.
So hopefully everyone on your teammates is like, "Hey, I listened to the podcast and you said this," so they get
They're like, "Man, you're a real strange dude," We don't know if we want you anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
So if you see a team change from Dany in the next few weeks, you can blame me for it.
Nah, you're good.
I've got a closing tradition that I've done on all of the shows so far, and it's really cool way to like tie in, each and every guest where I'll have them leave a question for next week, and they don't know who the guest is. And so it's been really cool to see like how it's played out. Like some people have connections and whatnot. And I had Mike Bianca on last week, and the question that he left for you without knowing that you were on.
Nice.
And like when I finally told him, he was like, "Oh my God," he's like, "I love Dany." And
that's
so it's cool how it happens. But his question for you and he asked this very specifically to not be something in paintball. So you're going to get something outside of paintball. But if you could transform something in the world, anything in the world that's not paintball related, what would it be?
Transform to it? Like to...
He left it very open to where however you want to take it.
Is that what you're saying?
So man. If you could transform something.
Right, I'm gonna have you repeat that question one more time.
Yeah, sorry, I was breaking up a little bit. he said, if you could transform something in the world, what would it be? And he left it pretty open to where whatever your mind's going to go with it, maybe it's changing a political policy or however you want to take that path, but just something not paintball related.
Yeah. Man, he's such a stoic. I got a great opportunity to really become pretty good friends with Mike this year. We traveled a lot together, so I'm glad that he's the one that asked this. To be honest, this is a tough one for me, but as a kid, I always, I'm from Cleveland, so I remember as a kid driving into like Cleveland, and you see a homeless people under the the bridges and stuff like that. And I think it was always sad. I was always, as a kid, you're like, oh, I just wish homeless people weren't, wasn't a thing. And then you start to get older and you realize like some of it is a choice, right? For some people, unfortunately. So I would say if one thing would be, just helping our military more, right? Like there shouldn't be homeless military people. I really do believe that, like, as a country, if we could do more for them, I would say that would be like the biggest thing, right? Is I feel like mental health for military people and mental health in general, but just
Sure.
It's sad when you see some of that stuff and people who gave so much and, it's kind of got left to, I think that would be what I would transform if I could, make sure that wasn't a thing. I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but
yeah, it's an incredible answer. And I think, that hits home for me too, because here in Austin, we've got homeless as well. And my commute to work every day, like I pass them, and so you start to see this almost the same people every day. And like, like the signs are changing and they're trying different methods to just get food or water or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you, especially like now when it's cold out, it's like, man, I can't believe,
yeah.
I'm in a sweatshirt. I'm kind of warm in this room, and like somebody would kill to have this or have the heat on. So yeah,
it's an interesting one. I know you can't see it, but we had 8 to 12 inches of snow last night overnight here in Cleveland. So it was like -6 or something was the feels like today. So yeah, and I mean I used to work downtown, and you'd see a lot of the people. And like I said, some of them it's choices, some of it's whatever. But it always pulls on the heartstrings a little bit when you're bundled up in a nice warm house and somebody's out there freezing their butt off.
Totally.
Hope there'd be a little bit more for them, but
for sure, that's a great answer. This is where I always get myself in trouble. I always say, "Hey, the pressure's off. You get to ask the question." That seems to stress everybody out. It's like, no, this is the hard part of the conversation. So you get to ask the next guest any question you'd like.
Yeah, this is a good one because you could go anyway.
And a lot of these conversations have, like, some people have asked very specific paintball related. Obviously, Mike went, very
broad.
Yeah,
he was like, you can do whatever you want. I would say, and obviously I don't know who it is. So this person, I guess it could be paintball related, or this could be real life outside of paintball. But if there was one decision they've made in their life that they could go back and change for whatever reason, whether it be that, they just made the wrong choice, or they could have made a choice a little bit differently and had a different outcome, I think.
Yeah. Wow.
What would it be?
That's a really deep question. And I'll ask it in a way to where they can go however they want to go, if it's paintball related or not.
Yeah. I think everybody has that one, has something, that they could think of that they wish they did different, or, whatever it is. Could be anything.
Yeah. Incredible. Man, this has been so good. I appreciate you taking some time, away from the family and away from work.
It's good.
And chat for a bit. I think you've obviously had a lot of fans get to know you in the past few years, being on Dynasty. And I think shifting over to Infamous, you're about to see a whole different fan base as well. And so it'll be cool to see like how your game really evolves in the next few years with these guys.
For sure. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait. Can't wait to hopefully play Dynasty. So I can, that'll be a good one too.
Yeah. It'll be a battle, that's for sure.
For sure. So looking forward to it. But thanks again, Dan, and thanks for the patience. And
of course.
allowing me to eventually get here,
So paintball's taught me patience is so important.
For sure.
To everyone else, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.